Hello and welcome to another episode of ConunDRUM podcast. This week you're in for a treat. I've got none other than singer-songwriter Colin Fowlie. Um, if you're going to if you're the type of person that wants to reach for the good stuff, the top shelf liquor, a bourbon or whatever it is that tickles your fancy, um, Colin Fowlie would be the equivalent. He's an amazing singer. Musically, his songs just take you on such a journey. But lyrically, there's such great stories. Anyone, I think, would relate to the themes and everything that he talks about in his songs. So do check out his full lengths and his EPs and anything that you can get your hands on. Um, so we talk about a bit about the usual, where he's from, blah blah blah. But we kind of do a bit of a deep dive into what it is to be in the music industry now, with all the TikToks and everything like that. But the state of the country music scene, and what it is to stay relevant as an artist. We talk a bit about his background, and it's just a fantastic chat. So, as I said, you're in for a treat. Enjoy my conversation with Colin Fowlie.
Hello there.
Hey, cool. First shot. Bam. Hear you and I see you.
Perfect. Perfect. And is my level pretty good?
Oh yeah, Zoom actually has pretty good compression and it kind of keeps everything level, so
Yeah.
it's not too bad. Do you have
Okay.
a volume control on your mic and all that stuff?
Well, I'm going to use my headset
Yeah.
because it'll isolate me. And
Mhm.
I had, because of something else I was doing with one of my students, I had turned automatic volume adjustment off,
Mhm.
and it was low. So I set it to automatically gain up now.
Yeah.
Hopefully anyway,
Oh
should be
yeah.
all right.
It's all good. Cool. Anyway, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Yeah. I've seen you a couple times when you played in Miramichi.
Okay.
The last time I would have seen you was at the Downtown Music Festival.
Hmm.
I only got to catch a little bit of your set because I was doing a lot of running around for Win.
Yep.
He was using my kid as the back line, and so I was
Okay.
just doing a whole bunch of running around that weekend, helping out as you do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
When
yeah,
yeah, when you're involved in a festival, as an artist, you have it kind of easy. You just got to show up and do your thing and leave. But it's the folks that are volunteering that
yeah,
are putting all the work in. So
yeah. Well, I was doing double duty, so I think you played on the Saturday, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, yeah. We were playing the Saturday as well. We were opening the loud stage.
Okay.
Yeah,
What band are you in?
Six Gun Smoke.
Okay, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So I mean, it was a great festival.
Yes, it was.
The weather was kind of crap, so it kind of affected the turnout a little bit,
Yeah,
but
yeah, I know.
everybody that was there had a great time. And I mean, when Win is anticipating in another festival next year, so
Yep.
yeah, which is great. So just keep building it, right? I mean, that's
Uh, exactly. It's what we do. Like here in Fredericton, Eddie Young's done something very similar with the Living Roots Music Festival, which has grown over, I think it's like 6 years, 6 or 7 years now, and it just
Mhm.
keeps getting bigger and better. A bit of a hiatus year, and I think it was 2020. There wasn't much, but he tried to do a little something,
Yeah,
and kind of bounced back a little in 21. I think it was. My sense of time from early 2020 until like earlier this year is completely screwed, and I can't
yeah,
remember if it was last week or 2 years ago,
yep,
and I'm horribly unreliable in that regards. So
yeah. Oh, I hear you, man. Like you're not the only one. Like that whole blip of the COVID year and a half or whatever.
yeah,
Like it took its toll on everybody, really.
yeah, big time, big time.
Big time, I know like on your YouTube channel, just, speaking of the COVID thing, during COVID, you were putting stuff out regularly and having
Yeah,
chats in your living room and,
yeah,
they were great.
yeah. I stopped posting as much of the long form content because as much as the people who like it a lot, when you actually get the data back on all of that stuff and you find out what your audience retention was,
Hmm.
and that after 5 seconds you lose like 90 some plus percent of your audience, it's like,
Yeah.
what am I doing?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But it was a good creative exercise, but it is not
Absolutely.
necessarily the best use of your time when you're trying to actually now focus on like growing, the business and the career and
Hmm.
that kind of thing. You have
Yeah.
to, you still need that stuff, but it's a weird game. I don't, I,
It's yeah, it's a weird. I don't even pay attention to it. Like if I have 10 people that watch these, if I have 100 people that watch them, I do them mostly for myself. Just
yep,
like I've said it in almost every other episode, like the podcast was birthed out of COVID, not being able to hang out with other musicians, in between sets and at festivals.
yep,
So not having that, not that I was empty inside, because that's not, all of who I am, but
yep,
it's a big part of being an artist and having those interpersonal connections,
absolutely,
So
absolutely.
that's why I do it, and I keep doing it, because it's still around, but it's, we're able to get out and play shows
Yep,
and do that now. But it's a great gateway to get to know people and have other people, get to know the guests, or even myself a bit
yeah,
more.
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure, for sure.
Yeah.
So are
Um,
we live now, or what's the score?
yeah, yeah. I learned a long time ago, always be recording. Like,
Yeah. Well, you saw, not to talk out of school, but you would have seen Abby McCartney, who was playing up in Miramichi. She played just
yeah,
before I did,
yeah.
and we're recording a track together. And I had her in the headphones and just trying to get a monitor level set for her, and she was singing. Had I been recording that take, like we would have been done before we started. Like she
Yeah,
just
yeah.
was so consistent, so good.
Well, it's that whole, red light, um, like where the recording
Red
lights
light
on and
fever.
red
Yep,
light fever.
red light
Yeah.
fever.
Like, when you're just loose and you're just getting ready, and it just, that's where the magic happens. So,
Yep, yep,
you know,
absolutely.
and already the magic is, clearly. So you're based out of Fredericton, right?
That's right.
Is that where you're like born, raised, where the roots are?
No, I was born in St. John and grew up born in the old hospital that they blew up. So
Hmm.
it was a fun day watching that thing get exploded or imploded more accurately
Hmm.
on TV. But
My
I
wife,
grew up.
same.
Okay, right on.
Yeah.
So I grew up outside, just outside in Quispamsis,
Okay.
and I I left home like as soon as I could and moved up to Fredericton and did school, like right out of high school,
Hmm.
and then lived in the States for a few years after school. Moved back to the KV area for a year or so, and then wound up settling in Fredericton. So for love, I
For love. Yeah. Yeah.
chase after a woman. Yeah,
Perfect. I think that's why we all do it. That's why
like
we all
seven.
end up where we end up.
It's like 17 years ago, so I'm not harboring any grudges or anything. We're still together, and I'm still in Fredericton. So
Well, that's a good thing. You're not
yeah,
harboring grudges. Yeah. No, my wife's from St. John, and she was also born. So they still have the old, is it the bell, or
the dome off
the
the
dome
top
on
of
the
it.
top
Yeah,
of it. Yeah, yeah, at that terrible intersection at the top of that hill.
yep,
I'm glad I didn't learn how to drive in St. John, because,
yeah.
man.
Oh man, it was something else. Like you'd be doing your driving instructor lessons and whatnot and do your hours. All right, let's go drive through Sims Corner in St. John a few times. And
Yeah.
once you figured that out, I mean, St. John's not a big city, but it is weirdly laid out because it's,
Hmm.
right on the coast and stuff. So it's not a nice perfect grid.
Hmm.
As far as how difficult they are to get around, Fredericton's probably the easiest of the three big
Yeah.
cities in the province of Moncton,
Once
St.
you
John,
once you
Fredericton.
learn the grid of Fredericton,
Yeah.
like the one ways and how to get around. Yeah, I learned that quickly during the ECMAs. Like, I'd been to
Yep.
Fredericton a few times, but
Hmm.
never really paid attention. I mean, Regent, Prospect, that's it.
Yep.
But then during ECMA weekend, I I can get around Fredericton no problem now.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And like Moncton's probably in the middle, but St. John's the toughest for sure. And it
Yeah.
prepares you for driving elsewhere in much larger places.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Like you said, like just those intersections. There's like Sims corner, like it's like a three-way intersection, like with a light and it's a one way and it's weird.
Just
Anyway.
yeah, you need to kind of know how it works. So
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Um, so you went to school in Fredericton that like after graduating. So UNB, what did you study in UNB?
so it was a long time ago, based on the gray and the beard and stuff. But
Uh,
I actually studied engineering at UNB. So my
okay.
my first career was I don't like things that are like super structured. So I always kind of enjoyed an element of creativity to my work, right? So I did internet working, like IT, figuring out how to make, computers talk to each other across the world, because you had to be able to
Mhm,
kind of close your eyes and visualize how stuff worked. And I did that for a while and
mhm,
just kind of fell out of love with it 5 years or so before I stopped doing it.
mhm.
And
So that would have been what, mid 90s, early 2000s?
so I graduated in 2000. That's kind of when I
Okay.
started. And anyway, so I mean, I worked at that till 2018, and
Mhm,
then that's when I kind of made the shift to music full time, and it had become a hobby that was then more than a hobby, and then I was kind of semi-professional and still playing like 100 shows a year and whatnot while working full time, and it just I didn't love what I was doing anymore on the career side of it, and figured I would try and start hacking together a living doing the music thing.
mhm.
Um, you probably know, if you don't know him, then you probably know of Chris Colpaw.
Oh yeah, we before we were Six Gun Smoke, we were known as the DiBiase's, and
Okay,
Win was doing shows atop of the Goodie Shop. Can't remember what the
okay,
series was called, but it was like a downtown series or something like
hmm
that. And we actually opened for Chris Colpa and the Cosmic Crew.
hmm
This was like, oh man, 2000, we're 2023 now, so it would have been like 2018, 19,
hmm
something like that. So
hmm
a few years ago.
Yep.
But yeah, yeah, I
Eh,
met Chris, great guy.
Yep. So, I mean, we were just having a chat. I think it was at Music New Brunswick's annual conference or something like that. And,
Hmm.
this was in 2018 as I was making the move to do it. And he was like, at the end of the day, if you look at like your through the three pillars of your life, which is work, family, and music, you can really only do two of them well. So
Yeah.
unless you're going to make music your work, then you're either going to, not be giving your all to your family, or something's got to give. And he was saying that in support of the idea that I focus my professional um, calories, if you will, on the
Hmm.
music as well.
Yeah.
And I had a bunch of support. I still do from folks that kind of pushed me in that direction, because of just what I was doing, with the hobby time, I guess, that I had for it. And they're like, it'd be a shame if you didn't try and do this for real.
Hmm.
And kind of nudged me. And my wife was supportive as well, and we figured out we'd make it work. I was actually kind of hoping to work into 2019, but an opportunity to leave presented itself with severance, so I took it
It took it with severance. Yeah, that's
with
not
severance.
that doesn't happen often. Uh,
No, it let me put some money away for the kids' education. So even if I fail miserably as an artist, then they still have that locked away, and
yeah,
you know stuff
and
like
and
that.
and it's not like you don't have the education and the thing to fall back on when you do decide to stop pursuing music as your career.
I don't plan to ever stop at this point.
Mhm,
I can never go back. I can never go back to working for somebody else ever again. I think
mhm.
that ship has sailed.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of us, want that type of career or aspirations. Like whenever, I mean, not that when I started playing music that it was ever thought of that it would be a career aspiration
mm,
or that you'd make anything out of it. Like just growing up as a punk kid, skateboarding, making
hmm
noise with your friends. Like you're
yep,
not thinking, oh, I can make money at this or I can make a living
hmm
at this. So as you get older, if you're maintaining that, like for myself, I have a full-time job. I'm never going to leave that job because the benefits far outweigh
hmm
not doing it,
hmm
pension and all that stuff, you know. But a lot of my outside energy, I have a very supportive family where I can,
hmm
pursue the music to the extent that I'm comfortable with,
yep.
you know. And that's really the balancing act that we all have is, what are you comfortable with doing, and what can you make a living at?
Absolutely. And that's like, that is me saying that is like no disrespect or no shade at all to somebody who has another source of income. They're probably smarter individuals than I am in reality.
Mm.
So,
I'm a
it's
drummer, so
especially
no.
okay, but um, yeah, like everyone's got to kind of find that balance for themselves. And
Yeah.
in my position where I'm not famous and I'm not selling out arenas, the it's about structuring because of my previous life. As I have the ability now to kind of figure out things in the music business that I can then monetize, if you will, generate revenue streams in a way that I'm comfortable with. So I've learned how to produce, I've learned how to mix and record and do those things, and I really enjoy that aspect of it. So there's that technical piece of it, which isn't too overwhelming. I mean, a lot of folks can learn how to get there
Yeah.
with the creative, and I find that that's great. And so when I'm not actively touring, because I have kids, I don't want to be on the road half the time. I want to be
Particularly in
able
the
to do
winter.
no, exactly right.
Yeah.
Canadian touring in Canada past once you get into October,
Hmm.
even you're flirting with danger.
Hmm.
So, we did a West Coast tour in September of 2019, late September, and got hammered with snow.
Hmm.
And it wasn't fun. So I don't want to be relentlessly touring. I want to be able to do, let's say, two, three, maybe four good tours a year of, 2, 3 weeks. Go play some select festivals, but I still want to be active. And that's where like social media, particularly micro content now with TikTok for me,
Hmm.
it plays a role. It plays a role staying connected to
Yeah.
people, generates new leads for people that are having me produce tracks, or I make some income from teaching, and just kind of cobble together a means to pay my bills and keep it going. So
Yeah. 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 The keeping your name, in the eye of people that are watching, we struggle with
yeah,
that.
it's
Like, I think that's a big struggle for a lot of people, because as a musician, as a creative, there's the creative aspect of doing the TikToks and all those, Insta videos or whatever you want to call them.
mhm,
We didn't go into doing music with that background, that
right,
marketing savvy, in
right.
mind of having to do that, but then you're kind of forced that you need to, because that's the only way you're really going to stay relevant. Um,
Unless, and I mean, even some would argue, you go out and pound the pavement and tour and whatnot, but the only way that people figure out what shows they're going to come to now is through social media,
mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So whether you're the one that's doing it, or you partner with somebody who's good at that
Mhm.
in exchange for something that you can do for them that you're good at, like bartering and
Yeah.
collaborating and whatnot. I think it's a necessary part of it.
Yeah.
And even with the following that I've built, some nights on the road it's a struggle to get butts and seats, and some nights it's really good. Like it's
Yeah.
and you have to be constantly at it. Otherwise,
Yeah.
people stop paying attention, even when it comes to folks listening to music on Spotify. If I'm not actively either spending money on it, which
Mhm.
I'm not, the revenue in COVID times has gone down. So marketing spending has to go down. Not that I was spending a pile of money, but you had money to make some professional videos and to run some ads and do some of those things. And they stopped being effective when everyone started doing the exact same thing. So part of this is just staying, don't not being afraid to take risks, and just trying to stay ahead of things to the best of your ability, but also finding things that you can live with doing. Like you can't do all the things. There's too much stuff. You can't do
Yeah.
all of it. So find something that you can live with doing or that you enjoy doing that also works.
Mhm.
It's like, for example, when I put out a little EP earlier this year called the Nottingham Sessions, and it was just three Roger Miller songs from the
Love them.
Disney Robin Hood movie,
Love them.
and
Love it.
I had a blast doing it. But it's like this beautiful intersection of publicity stunt versus something that was very creatively fulfilling.
Mhm.
I did it here in my home studio. It cost me no money, and it got a few new listeners that
Mhm.
otherwise probably wouldn't have checked out what I was doing.
Yeah.
And so it's just finding little things like that to just keep gradually stepping your way forward when this is, your life's focus. And for the folks that want to go out and get together with their friends and jam once a week, and maybe pull a show together, hop on a lineup with some friends a couple of times a year just to have a blast.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome too. And you probably don't need to do all the social media hustle and whatnot. So
Yeah. No, like I have nothing to add to that.
excellent. Good talking to you.
Good talk. Thanks. See you later. Yeah. No, but it's true. And I mean, that's the time that we live in. Gone are the days where, people are spending thousands of dollars in the studio, and there's that, record company dream, when you were a kid with all the, Kiss and all those posters on your wall, think, oh, I just want to get a record deal and I'll make it kind of thing. Those days are gone. And in a way, it's, to me, it's kind of for the better, because the control is back in the artist's court, because we can create what we want and put out what we want, how we want to do it, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely agree. Like, all a record deal really used to be was an inflated bank loan with a horrible interest rate.
Hmm.
Like, you paid that
You
back,
paid it back.
or
Yeah.
like you paid that back. And if you were one of the very few that got lucky where you turned like massive profits, like, yeah, you made lots of money, but the
Hmm.
record label made way more than you did.
Way more. And I mean, it's still
So
that way,
it is.
you
It
know?
is. There are certain aspects of the industry, unfortunately, that it's like print media and whatnot. They're clinging, their death rattle is imminent, but they're clinging to certain things, and certain parts of the industry are very highly gate kept. When it comes to getting on the radio, like
Hmm.
commercial radio,
Yeah.
it's expensive and good luck. Getting music placed in TV and film, like basically where the money's at,
Hmm.
there's a gatekeeper in front of it typically. And
Yeah.
that's where you kind of have to build networks and have connections. And that's where record labels, they still have pull.
Yeah.
But that being said, you can, through a creative and clever social media campaign of your own, you can blow up and get a whole bunch of ears on your music.
Hmm.
And what'll typically happen is once an artist kind of goes viral, or they establish a fan base, now then record labels will come in and try and take control of it. They don't bet
Yeah.
on they only bet on established winners at this point.
Yeah.
So it's the majors. And so, it has transformed. I think that the technology that we have available to us at home, there's no reason you can't make something that's at least sonically is of high quality as they were making in Abbey Road back in the 60s and 70s. Like, you
Yeah.
can do that at home.
Yeah.
The tools have improved incredibly.
Hmm.
And so it's, you're really only limited to your own creativity and the patience, to teach yourself the things that you need to know.
Hmm.
But it's very accessible,
Yeah.
for assuming you already have a decent-ish computer. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. Like, for less than a
No.
$1,000 worth of gear, you can get a fully functioning recording studio to do, small projects for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's the argument of, well, now that everybody can do it, there's a lot of crap out there. It's like, yeah,
There
there's a
is.
lot of crap.
There
Absolutely.
is.
However, there is a lot of good stuff out there that you might have to dig through to find it, but the cream rises to the top. So a good artist is still a good artist amongst, all of the other
Yep.
stuff that's out there.
Absolutely. I think that there are some great artists that haven't been noticed yet,
Hmm.
but the people that complain that music's never been worse, they're only listening to the radio, right?
Yeah.
They're only listening to the radio because certain elements of radio, anyway,
Hmm.
for
Well, country
for
music radio is a prime example of that,
country music
you know.
radio is so. Am I allowed to
It's
swear on this podcast? Like,
absolutely.
it is, but it is so fucking bad. It is
It is.
so
It's terrible.
so bad. It's
But,
brutal.
like there's the Florida Georgia lines and all that other crap. But if you dig and you're a lover of the genre, then you're going to fall upon
Better
artists.
country music has never, like, there's never been a better time for country music right now.
Hmm.
It's just there's never been a worse time for radio country.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like, a lot of these, like, the country music industry especially, and I honestly want country music fans to listen to my music. That's kind of where I play. So,
Yep.
at the risk of biting the hand that could potentially feed me.
Well.
But, I'll tune into the radio and there's going to be 5 songs in a row. 4 of them are by dudes. 3 of them are drinking songs.
Mhm.
One of them is about objectifying a woman, and then the good stuff is by the few women that they play, and it's just the
Yeah.
ratios aren't there. But if folks are willing to just take that little extra step outside, there's never been better country music that's being
Oh,
made.
dude,
This
Coulter
the
Wall,
He's the man.
Nick
Yep.
Shoulders, Benjamin Todd.
Hmm.
Those are just 3 off the top of my head. Like,
Yep.
amazing.
Yep, absolutely. Sturgill Simpson, Jason
Yeah.
Isbell, Anna Tibble, not super country, but like one of the best songwriters I've ever heard
Mhm.
of any genre ever. It's just there's Brandy Carlisle. There's just so much of it,
Oh,
right?
she's
And
amazing.
and it's just that one little step outside the bubble
Mhm.
of radio.
Mhm.
And that music is unapologetically created. It's not art in a sense, like, and they know what they're doing it on purpose, and anyone that's sort of an insider that's willing to kind of talk openly about it, they'll admit it freely. And that, like, country music is to art what the prints are that they sell at Walmart or HomeSense. Like, they're trying to just put something out
Yep.
there that as many is going to appeal to as many people as possible.
Yep.
And because country radio is still one of the relevant radio formats,
Yeah.
and they're trying to sell ad space. They're trying to create catchy music for people to do while they're doing something else,
Mm.
while they're driving, while they're attending the tailgate party, and that's what that music is meant to be. Like,
Yeah.
if you look at a lot of the hit singers, they're not on in the songwriting credits of a lot of their own tunes, or
No,
they're
no,
last on the list, which
they're
means that
last.
they kind of were in the room, but not they didn't really write it, you know.
They said okay to certain parts that were presented to them.
Exactly, and maybe
You
they
know?
tweaked a word or something, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
like, I had this conversation with somebody about, like, somebody called Morgan Wallen like a badass songwriter. I'm like, you might be a fan of Morgan Wallen and what he does, and the sound of the music he creates, but I would not say he's a badass songwriter, because on his biggest hits, he's not anywhere in the credits. And on most of his album cuts, he's like last on the list.
Yeah.
So, but country music now, so I've said, like, music is to art what, prints are in
Prince
Walmart.
Edward Wilmer.
I have these analogies for days because I just sit there staring at the ceiling thinking about them. Country music is to sports, or country music would be to, like, combat sports, like what wrestling is. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like, it's kind of, yeah,
It's packaged,
sto-
it's presented in a specific way
but
for
but
that
it's like
market.
but it's dramatized, and
Yeah.
everyone has a story, and there's characters and whatnot. Whereas, like, the UFC probably doesn't have the viewership of wrestling, but it's
No.
getting more and more popular, right? And these people are actually, uh, combat athletes. Not to say
Yeah.
that wrestlers aren't athletes, because they are,
They are. They're
but
entertainers.
it's entertainment, right?
Yeah.
It's an entertainment industry, as
Mhm.
opposed to just pure, this is music, this is art.
Yeah.
And, that stuff is absolutely out there, and the quality of it's never been better. But that is not what radio country is intended to be.
Yeah. Um, so we're talking about country and artists and stuff like that. So, if we come back to getting to know more about you as an artist, who were
Mm.
some of your influences coming up when you were learning to play the instrument?
Well, I mean, when I first started playing the guitar when I was a kid,
Mhm.
and it would have been my grandmother that taught me the basics. So, she played in church, and it was old gospel songs, and, Carter Family, and Waylon and Willie, and all the classic country is what was around that
Mhm.
part of my life.
Mhm.
My mother's side of the family was from, like, outside Sussex, so rural, like, country folk. And so, I mean, I heard a lot of that when I was younger. My dad always kind of kept up on what was happening in the top 40, and had a lot of classic rock records. So he had um, all the old Zeppelin and the Beatles and the Stones, and I listened to all of it, and CCR, and so learning that type of thing, classic rock, along with the folk and the gospel and country stuff from my grandmother, that informed my guitar playing early on. But then the 90s happened, right? And so we had been through this really dark era of synth pop and hair metal
Mhm.
when grunge music emerged. And to me, that was that was a game changer. Like I was listening to, you know, jazz from the 50s and 60s and grunge in my kind of formative years in the 90s. And, it wasn't until maybe 10 years ago that I really got back to let's listen to what's going on in the alt country Americana side of things, where that's where the great songwriting lives,
Mhm.
and really started to immerse myself in more of that. And that's where everything just kind of aligned, where my musical influences and now these new songwriting influences that were becoming a part of my life, like that kind of married up. I'm like, okay, I can do this.
Mhm.
I'm inspired to do this. I had previously tried to write grunge songs and jazz songs and back way back, and never really hit on anything that resonated. And then when I started leaning more into this side of things, that's I guess where things sparked, and I felt that I could really had something to say. And maybe it could be the time of my life when I started doing it, which was in my 30s, and I had experienced some stuff. And
Yeah.
I haven't been everywhere, but I've been around. I've been outside my borders, and traveled a bit and
Yeah.
met a lot of people and had a bunch of different experiences, good and bad. So
Yeah. The best
I think,
experience is the travel experience where you get to meet different people from different walks of life
yeah,
and
for sure,
see some
for
things
sure.
that are outside of your normal day to day.
Yep.
Yeah. Because I mean, in your songwriting, like a lot of your stories, like they're, the every person kind of a story. Like they're very poignant lyrics. Um,
Thank you.
well, well, I mean, credit where credit is due. Um, so how do you approach writing lyrically versus musically?
Um, so there's these occasional rare moments where it just kind of happens, where everything falls into place at once, where I'm sitting there with the guitar and a lyrics there, and then there's like a chorus, and then there's a song, and it happens in 20 minutes, and I can't really explain it. But that is the overwhelming minority of the time.
Mhm.
Usually, um, I will just sit there and mess around with the guitar, and if I come up with something cool, I'll put it, it goes in the voice
The
recorder.
voice
It
memo, yeah.
goes in the
Yep,
bank,
yep.
and they just pile up. And lyric ideas are the same thing. Like I'll be out somewhere, I'll overhear a line, or a lot of times it'll start as like a smart ass response that I'll have to some situation, or a cliche that I'll make fun of, honestly.
Mhm.
And I just kind of keep coming up with these lines. And those lines, they go into a scratch pad on my phone if I have a piece of paper or whatever. I used to keep a notebook, but I'm terrible at actually like the romantic aspect of writing
Yeah,
things out by hand. But
yeah.
it's not really for me. I just like to be done with it. So it goes in a text memo, or just I'll voice record the lyric that I'm working on,
Mhm.
and those kind of go into a pile. And occasionally, then I'll come up with a second lyric line that I'm like, that thing I came up with. Those two go well together. And once like two lines kind of marry up, then I'm typically off to the races. But these lines, they come from being out in the world. So I wasn't super prolific during the pandemic when I had all the time in the world to sit and write, because it's watching people. It's imagining the story behind their life, just having seen them for 10 seconds, in a convenience store in small town Maine or something like that. And or you'll overhear them tell a little story about their life, and then you expand on it creatively. Those feed a lot of my songwriting ideas. I mean, many of the songs are personal, and there's some real experience in there. But as Donovan Woods says, all the songs are true and all of them are fiction. That's
Mm.
basically,
Yeah.
there's always something real behind it, but the degree of artistic liberty I take can be, in the 90%, in the 90s of percent, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because like when I hear your stuff, I'm taken back to like Sean Mullins and Everlast. Like there's some of that in what I hear.
I can dig
Some
I can dig that.
some of it.
Everlast is one of my favorites ever. Like I
He's
love
amazing.
Everlast.
Yeah, but like just some of the melodies and just the lyrical deliveries in your voice, like there's some elements of those two in particular that I've in my ear anyway. I don't have the best ear because of playing drums and cymbals and all that crap. But when I hear it, that's kind of where it takes me as so I assume there's like you said, Everlast is like your guy or whatever. So there's
Yeah.
some influence in that.
Well, I mean, his songs are stories, right? Like it's his are folk songs with a hip hop underpinning. Basically, when you look at a lot of Everlast tunes,
Mhm.
and they're real language. Um, and so there's a lot for my lyrical process. There's a lot of editing. Like it has to sing well. Um, it has to not be too cliche. Like I'll try and come up with my own way of saying things, or rather than try and get too cute, just say it in plain language. Like my favorite lyrical songwriter, one of them would be Jason Isbell, and you look at. I mean, one of his biggest influences would have been John Prine. So if you look at like the generation forward that John Prine influenced, and Prine himself was a
Yeah,
master of it,
yeah.
but like Casey Musgraves and Rustin Kelly and like it, if somebody is from the camp of John Prine, there's a really good chance that I'm going to like what they do, and that was a hallmark of his writing and of Isbell's writing. Like it's common language used in like this really beautiful way. It's vulnerable. Like they have a lot of empathy in what they're writing. There's not you don't have this, I guess, like that toxic masculinity, if you will, that
Oh, yeah.
like country music, like as
Oh,
much
yeah,
as I
there's
don't
a
like
lot of that in there.
to be swinging on I wouldn't say that I'm extreme in my views one way or the other, but I mean, let's be honest. Like
Mhm.
that is what that is in a lot of
Yeah,
cases, and pure and simple.
yep.
But or jingoism, like the extreme patriotism and stuff. Like
Oh,
that's
God, yeah.
to me, that's just not real, right?
Toby
That's like
Keith.
if you've ever been out in the world, like that's just not real. Like um so I don't know. So I'm turned off by that type of thing, and that's why I'm drawn to songwriting that has a great deal of empathy and
Mhm.
isn't afraid to take a tough look at itself. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? I think that's important.
yeah.
And some of my new stuff that is unreleased, just because I've been writing from a better mindset. Now that I'm doing what I love. So despite it being a struggle,
Mhm.
it is a struggle that I love. So I'm able to be more lighthearted. Like some of my new songs will make people smile, and it's not all necessarily doom and gloom and murders in the night
Mhm. There's some
and
optimism. There's some light
terminal
at the end of
illness
the tunnel.
and
Yeah,
yeah, exactly, right.
yeah.
So, but at the same time, like one of the new songs that's been going over really well in concert, it's like a tongue-in-cheek look at middle-aged men who grow beards and get motorcycles and dress up tough and go out riding around with their friends. Guys
Yeah,
like me,
yeah, yeah,
me, like I did that, right? And
yeah.
and my wife quite rightfully, kind of made fun of it. She's like, "Oh, are your friends coming over to go out and ride bikes?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's exactly what we're doing."
Yeah, Sons of
Doing do
Anarchy definitely helped that culture.
Yeah, we're doing the
Um,
Sons of Anarchy cosplay, but that at the end of the
yeah,
day, yes, we're nine again, and we're gonna ride our bikes out to get cookies and milk. Except now it's nachos
yeah,
and
yeah.
beer, and
Nachos and
yeah,
beer. Yeah, yeah. Well, another good thing that came out of Sons of Anarchy was the White Buffalo. I haven't listened to
yeah,
his new album yet, but I mean, his stuff is just, and that's, that whole Americana speaking the truth. A lot of, you know, there's some aspects of that in what you're doing as well.
thank you. I love him. Like that show had an incredible soundtrack,
Oh yeah.
and like shows like Yellowstone's breaking some previously well known but not like famous artists, and they're playing some Isbell and they're playing Sturgill Simpson, I think, Zach Bryan and Coulter Wall and stuff like that's getting a lot of airplay on Yellowstone. So
Hmm.
which is cool.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, all was it all the tide raises all boats. So,
Yep. Yeah.
when one
Exactly.
comes up, then they all come up.
Exactly.
Yeah. Fantastic. So do you have like as a musical family, like your grandmother teaching you, do you have any other siblings? Like, is there like a whole Partridge family thing going on?
No, no. So my sister is also a singer. She's a great singer.
Hmm.
And we have in the past done some stuff together as a duo. We called ourselves Creative Differences, and we used to play bar gigs and kind of slide in some originals here and there. But when I was kind of trying to make up for lost time, that I wasn't doing music in my 20s, I wanted to get a lot of reps. So we'd go out and play 2, 3 shows sometimes a week, and all different kinds of stuff. But with harmonies and all that, had a good time with it.
Hmm.
And she has recently moved to Moncton, and so we haven't collaborated musically for a few years, although any always will. Like it's not like we had any kind of a falling out. Just our lives
Yeah.
went in different directions for a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
We're siblings, so that's always going to be an opportunity available to us until one of us loses our voice or drops dead. Um, but anyway, but other than us, my parents weren't musical. They encouraged it, but like Dad can still play "The Entertainer" by Scott Joplin on the piano, but from his days taking piano lessons. But that was about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Okay.
there was always music in the house, but not musicians.
Hmm. So does your sister have a musical project on her own in Moncton, or is she
Not
kind of?
not currently, not
No.
currently.
Okay.
She's joined a choir to get herself out and singing
Okay.
again, and
But yeah,
I'm
still
sure I'm sure
practicing.
yeah, I'm sure you'll see her pop up in a band somewhere along the line. She's a great like front woman, like just powerhouse vocalist, and yeah.
Okay. Cool. That's awesome. Yeah. So going into, you have two full lengths and then you did your EP on your own. The full lengths were studio recordings.
Yep.
Um, Now, whenever I've seen you, you've either been solo or duo,
Hmm.
with Blair Nickel. Um,
Yep.
how did you come upon working with her?
So and the reason that you see me as a solo or duo is usually a matter of economics, right? Like so
Yeah.
I do have a full 6-piece band that I perform with, but a lot of the festivals, like I'm not to the point where they're gonna it's not worth it.
Hmm.
And I'm still trying to, when I get festival gigs, they pay well. So I'm trying to use that to fund my enterprise, if you will. So
Yeah.
the band doesn't hit the road with me very often yet, but that's definitely something
That's
we want to
in
get into.
good. Good.
Um, I think you'd enjoy it. Now
Yeah.
with Blair, we actually met we were both taking part in a songwriting group that Jacqueline Reinhardt is another New Brunswick musician. She had kind of started as a Fredericton-based thing, just for
Yeah.
people to get together and shoot the breeze about songwriting
Yeah.
pre-pandemic.
I've had her on the podcast before, actually.
Okay, right on.
Yeah.
So she kind of got this thing started and asked if I'd help out organizing it. And then we had like one meeting, and then she took off to Toronto to go to like a Canada Music
Yeah.
incubator thing and left me holding the bag. So, but we had a good time, and we did take it online. It's not been as active the last year or so, but
Hmm.
that's where I met Blair. So Blair was one of the first. She was at the first all the in-person meetings, and we would just kind of go around and share songs and stuff. And I really was impressed with her. She doesn't have a lot of music out there right now. She has an EP under her maiden name, Blair Weber, which is a soundtrack that she was commissioned to create for
Okay.
a documentary project called the 12 Neighbors Project. And it's really good, but it's not necessarily her personal songs. And so and I got myself distracted. I was really impressed with her songwriting. And
Hmm.
when Terry Whalen had invited me to be on his Miramichi Songwriters program, and I had filmed it live and in person, uh, 2019, and
Hmm.
so he was doing a virtual one, um, 2020, I think it was, and
Yeah.
asked
Yeah.
if I knew of any other songwriters. He had a spot, an open spot, and I suggested Blair. And we just, in sort of bantering on that show, talked about co-writing. And I mentioned that co-writing's not something I've done a lot of. And Blair was like, I actually went to school, and one of the things we studied was co-writing, and it was one of those, well, you should write sometime. And
Yeah.
so we did, and we've only written a couple of tunes together so far, but plan to do more and actually have that duo thing become a project of its own.
Yeah.
And so I'll have my solo stuff, she'll have her solo stuff, and then we'll do some folky, or maybe sort of take a page out of the Gillian Welch, sorry, and Lost Dog Street Band sort of thing, and be a little
Yeah.
folkier with it. But anyway, we clicked. We did some work together. We clicked, and I needed somebody to help play some steel and harmonies and whatnot in my band when we were doing the album release show back in 2021.
Hmm.
And so I assembled this group, not knowing if that was going to be a thing going forward or if that was just a one-off for the album launch at the Playhouse. And it's just a really great band, like really good folks to work with. So she plays with me in all the formats except for solo, and I play guitar and steel on her music as well, with her husband on bass. So
Okay.
we've kind of developed a little family of, we can support each other. If I don't have an album on the go, then we can be working on one for her or for the duo. And so that, these things as an individual artist, they kind of come
Yeah.
in waves, right?
So you kind of it's like a
So if
DNA
I can
stream. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. So if I can intertwine the peaks and valleys of those three different projects with each other, then keeps me busy, right?
Yeah.
And that's, which is at the end of the day what I want to be doing. I want to be busy. I want to be playing live shows for an attentive audience. Doesn't have to be a
Mhm.
huge crowd, but
No.
attentive is nice. And
Yeah.
just working with people and making cool shit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's awesome. And like on the album, you've got like full band in the album. So that's the
Yep.
band that you're alluding to. Um,
So on my first record, it's some of the folks from my band that are playing on that one. On the second record, I actually had Ariel Posen producing it, and so I flew to Winnipeg and we used his band. It was session.
okay. Yeah. Session
Well,
guys.
I would say session guys, but these guys have worked together as a touring unit as well. So
Like
they were just.
like the band back in the
It
day.
was unbelievable to watch them work, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unbelievable. And no knock against New Brunswick. And this is something that's set to change because we have some pretty heavy hitters, heavy hitting recording studios that have opened up here in the past few years.
Yeah.
But the opportunity to play on a ton of high end records just isn't here. And it is in
Yeah.
Winnipeg.
Well, I mean,
So
it's because of the population,
yeah,
you know.
but a lot of the stuff that was coming out of Winnipeg, I thought was the best sounding roots music in Canada. With the brothers Landreth, Ariel himself, William Prince is out
The
there.
deep dark woods.
I'm a huge fan of Del Barber.
Hmm.
All of that stuff. So I actually wound up having the same mix engineer that did some of Del Barber's records, and Ariel's become a great friend and mentor, if you will. And the dude is he's world class. And so just having the opportunity to work with a team like that was something else. And I'm making my next record with Jason Barry. So
Oh, yeah. You've worked with him before, haven't you? You
worked
did
with
like a
him
songwriting thing with Emily Landry.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
which was a beautiful song. Like you guys wrote that in like a day?
Yeah. Yep.
Fuck off.
It's so I'm angling to have that song on my next record,
It's
and
such
to
a
get
good song.
to get Emily to come in and sing it.
Yeah,
I love it. I love it.
yeah. And Jason Barry, he went to school with my brother and my cousin,
Hmm.
Roland Beaulieu, who's
Hmm.
in PEI.
Oh, the
Um,
role. He's a talented lad.
yep. That's putting it lightly. Yeah.
Yep.
He just finished touring with Carol Baker. They did
Yep.
a run of Christmas shows.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. He's actually did a double episode of this with him last year. We just I mean, family. Like he's been my cousin. He's known me my entire life,
Hmm.
so I've watched him from when he was a teenager with the terrible mullet playing in the high school band. Learning how to play, and then just kind of going on from there. So I've watched his whole trajectory, which is
Hmm.
fantastic. And I'm hoping, from what he told me, he's working on some
Cool. Yeah.
songwriting and putting out his own music, which hopefully comes out sooner rather than later.
Yeah. That's
So
that's awesome.
how did you meet? How do you know Roland?
I've never met him.
Oh, okay.
We met virtually because he was making some videos that took off, and we just
Yeah.
got to chatting. Like, yeah, we
Okay.
gotta, well, we Next time our paths have the opportunity to cross, we should make sure we give him a push in that direction kind of conversation. That's it. So I know of him, and we've conversed online back and forth, like very briefly in comments and whatnot.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know
You should,
he's incredibly talented.
I'll put in a word. You guys should do a collaboration.
I'd be
That
down. I'd be
that'd be
down for that.
awesome. So yeah, Jason Barry. Yeah, I mean he went away, and he's Jason Barry. He's toured and
He's
played with
he's
some
the
big
man.
artists. He's the man.
He's the man.
Um, so he's got his Barry Sound Studios.
Hmm.
So he had that out where he was
He was
before,
in
but now
London,
he's
Ontario. I think he
yeah,
was roughly in the London, Ontario
yeah,
area. And I mean, he's and he works in that country commercial country space, no
yeah,
doubt about it.
yeah. No
And so
shade.
I know I no shade to it, right? Like
Hmm.
it's a craft, it's a skill set. And he's so damn good at it. Like
Yeah,
watching him work. So the amount of knowledge that I hope to glean from him, and he's just like he's just one of the nicest human beings
yeah,
that you could ever possibly meet. And he seems, and he's probably like this everyone, but he seems legitimately excited to work with me, and I'm super excited to work with him. And what I want to make something with his skill set that sounds so ridiculously commercial with my lyrics onto it, right? I want to do at least one track like that, but generally speaking, like
yeah,
we want to create great music.
yeah,
So I'm really really excited to see where that goes.
yeah. His finished products are they're nice. They're well
It is
polished. Yeah,
big time,
yeah.
big time. He knows all the tricks. He knows how to do the things.
Mhm. So out of all the songs that you've written, um, and I kind of got this question based out of I was watching Jason Isbell talk about If We Were Vampires,
Hmm.
and how when he wrote that song, it was sort of like this aha kind of a moment. Do you have a song of yours that when you wrote it, it just took you aback that you had to like run out and show somebody right away because it was the thing?
Yeah. So the first I've had a couple that kind of I felt that way about. The first one where it kind of happened was off my first record, a song called Photographs. And my first edit of that song was not the final edit. Like I've learned a lot actually from interviews with Isbell about editing. But that one when I finished it, I'm like, that's a level up. That's a level or two up from where I was. Like that's a really good song. And had to show it to friends. And it stood the test of time. Like people respond very strongly to that song in person. Have you ever seen um like he passes song drafts back and forth with his wife Amanda Shires,
Oh,
and her notes on the draft of vampires that he handed to her? She just wrote, "Done. Fuck you."
it's that kind of song though.
It's
I
so
mean,
good. It's
I
so
actually
good.
this week introduced somebody to him
Hmm.
with that song. I'm like, listen to this song, and then
Yep.
that's all you need.
Hmm.
It's, I mean, it's a perfect song.
It is. It is
Yeah.
absolutely outstanding. And so, I mean, photographs kind of hit like that. And I've I'm always trying to sort of outdo myself in that regard. Um, so I'm just going to name that one because that was the first time that kind of happened.
Yeah.
And I think that just generally my songwriting has gotten better so that I have more that kind of flirt with that level or whatnot. But the next time that I have that one that really jumps forward and is like, damn. Well, doing all right to a certain extent was kind of like that in that it it was one of the first times because I was writing with Emily that there was no rules on it whatsoever. And so I didn't feel like I was writing to a particular audience. I had no restrictions on myself. And we took a bit of a step back. Like we didn't try and bite off this big plot or anything in the song.
Mhm.
It's just like a
Yeah.
couple of
Very
feelings.
simple. Yeah.
And the way that came together was a real aha moment. And
Yeah.
working with Jason, and we presented our songs to like this panel of country music industry experts, right? And they gave some feedback, and it was their feedback was intended with if you were to mold this song into a commercial country release. Here's what we would do. And
Mhm.
afterwards, like Jason kind of took us aside and he's like, I get what they're doing, right? And you know what they're doing, but I would think about maybe not listening too much to that. Do think about these things, and just learning how to edit so that everything was really tight, so that you said everything, and so we thought that we had this like really complete song that had you know um, a bunch of different moments. It went somewhere, but we didn't bite off too much. But the whole thing worked out to like less than 3 minutes. So I'm
Yeah.
like, okay,
Perfect.
this is new, this is interesting,
Mhm.
and this is definitely a different level.
Yeah.
So,
No, that song, and then thematically, it's so relatable to everyone because we've all had that moment
mm,
of, seeing somebody that just gets you, and you can't be with them, or they, they won't be with you back, or that it's not
hmm
reciprocated,
yep,
but you're putting on that face of, no, I'm okay, thanks. But
yep,
inside you're just torn up.
yep.
It,
And it's a duet too, like for the folks that have, because they will not have heard it, the people who are
Mhm.
watching this podcast. You can, I think, find it on my YouTube or my
I'll
Instagram
I'll
or
link it at
whatever.
the end of the video so people can
Because
click to it.
we just recorded the two of us singing it in the
Yeah.
basement of Barryton Studios when we were done. And but anyway, it's done as a duet. It's meant to be like his perspective, her perspective. Then they cross paths, and are there fireworks? And like
Yeah.
but I really like how it came together, and
Mhm.
her sense of lyricism is amazing, and her just her sense of melody and lyricism,
The
and she's right.
control the
Yeah,
control that she has vocally,
yep.
where
And
she pushes it and then pulls it in.
her voice is just
Yeah.
so good. Her voice is so good, so
Mhm.
good. It was really thrilling to work with her on it, and I want to cut that track with her, and hopefully she'll sign off and let me put it on the record because it's
Yeah.
it's really really fantastic.
Yeah. Um, so I have a section of the podcast that I call the crash questions. So they're kind of
Okay.
quick fire. Don't think too much into them. Um, but they're not like, I'm not uh, you know, Dateline, or
Okay.
I'm trying to think of a prolific reporter, but clearly I can't. And I'm, anyway. Um, so the first question I always ask everybody is cake or pie?
Depends. Depends. If it's my mother's rhubarb custard pie, probably pie, but in all other situations, cake.
Okay. That's a fair answer. That's fair. Um, so if I'm not sure if you're familiar with Doctor Who, the time
I
travel.
like only at a so sci-fi has never really been a thing that I lean into. Like
Mhm.
I've seen some good stuff, but I know roughly of the Doctor Who universe, but I'm
Yeah.
not a super fan by any means.
Okay. Um, irrelevant to the question. Basically, it's if you had a time machine,
Hmm.
what concert or event would you want to beam to experience in person?
There's a lot.
I mean, you can have more than we can elaborate. You can have more than one answer.
Well, I mean, it'd probably be Woodstock '69, the
Mhm.
OG Woodstock, just
Mhm.
because of the legends that played at that, like Jimi Hendrix and like CCR, and
Mhm.
I don't know, like I don't know that a better lineup's ever been assembled since, right? So
Yeah.
as far as like formative figures in music, so I would beam back to go see that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good pick.
It's
I
probably a
mean,
fairly popular one, but maybe
no,
not. I don't
this
know.
the first time I've gotten that answer.
Okay, it's
Yeah.
to me it's a cop out answer because I get to see a whole bunch of bands at one event, right?
No, no,
But
I mean, it's not just the who's on stage. It's also just the event, just the
yep,
experience of it.
yep,
You know.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Before they tried to redo it under the watchful eye of capitalism, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
as
Well,
soon
the
as you
one.
try and make something, like if you can organically make money at something, great. But as soon
Yeah.
as you make the focus like from the top from the
Yeah.
top down making
Yeah.
money, then things tend to go awry because
Yeah. The
we're a
second one
greedy
was
species.
the second one was kind of, okay, because they kind of tried to have the spirit of it. It was a little commercial, but that last one in 99, that was just, I mean, I
It
don't know.
was.
I don't know if you've watched that documentary, but I
I
had a
have.
hard time watching it.
Yeah, it was. It's hard to watch. It's
Yeah.
hard to watch.
Yeah. But important,
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
as terrible as the event was, it was an important thing for people to see just that whole toxic masculinity, that bravado that just does not belong in 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 that culture.
Yeah, I agree. And shoot, I had something I was going to say and I lost oh, what I want to put like a plug in there because, you have like those sorts of things that have happened since with like Woodstock 99. And then you see like the bullshit that's going on with Ticketmaster and stuff.
Oh
Like
God, yeah.
if anyone is watching this podcast or listening, you're probably already a steward of sort of local independent music. But what I want more people to understand is that music is not like sports in that there are some of the very best in the world that are on the biggest stages and the biggest arenas and whatnot. However, more often than not, the size of the stage and the size of the talent are not necessarily aligned. And you can see world class music that's playing to a small venue in your town, in a town nearby. Like there are world class acts that are playing here in Fredericton every week, and a lot of times they're playing to a half empty room. And then if you put them on stage at Harvest, they're going to have 5,000 people in front of them. Like it's just because they're on the big
Yep.
stage. Like the good there's such great music that isn't on the biggest stages that is
Mhm.
it's really worth checking out. Like you will probably find your new favorite band that you will love as much as anything you've ever loved, and it's somebody that you can sit down and have a coffee or a beer with afterwards just because like that's it's not a music isn't a meritocracy and people kind of think it is, so they're hesitant to maybe go check out that small show at the local venue. Like give it a chance. Give it a
Yep.
chance
100%. I
because
mean,
you're probably gonna have your mind blown if
yeah.
especially if somebody that you're friends with knows the scene and they kind of know what you're into and what this act is or what you might like. If you have somebody who's in the know that can curate something like that for you, then you're golden.
Yeah.
And for the people that are in the know, reach out to friends that don't go out to the smaller shows and try and convince them, like even reach out and see if you can get them a free ticket. Like I'll give away
Yeah.
free tickets to my show. If somebody is like, listen, I have a friend who's kind of on the fence, think you can get us on the list, 100% of the time. Done. Like you're on the list.
Yeah.
I would rather have a room full of strangers who are attentive and listening to me that didn't pay to see the show than have a theater full of my friends and family who are just there to give me money to support me and fill seats.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I
That's
want the
not why you're
people that
doing
are
it. Yeah.
no, right? Like we're
Yeah.
past the it's cute, he's doing this. Like,
Oh.
let's go
Yeah.
support our
Yeah.
buddy. Like if only
Yeah.
come if you like my music, right? But to do tell other people that might like my music because there are people that like it's like if they like it, they tend to like it a lot, and it's kind of where I'm at. When you make music that is a certain like that Americana thing, like if you're trying to be honest with your songwriting, you can't hit everybody. You can't. And but I write for the people that are willing to sit down and listen. Actually, give it an honest listen.
Yeah. No, and your stuff is beautiful.
Thank you.
I had another question. I'm not even going to bother because this is just the perfect way to kind of send off the podcast.
Okay. I
No,
totally
but
hijacked your rapid fire question with a long-winded it's what I
it was
do.
something about a favorite movie. It's no big deal. It's kind of irrelevant.
Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
There you go. I haven't watched that in forever.
It's
Oh
so
man.
quotable and
Yeah.
wild and
Yeah.
out there. It's probably my most watched movie,
Yeah.
which probably says a lot about me, actually.
No, but coming back to like what you were saying about going out and supporting the small acts that are on the smaller stages that are world class. I've said it countless times in the Maritimes in general, but in particular, I find New Brunswick just because of we don't get that spotlight that other places get. Like the Halifax and the
Mm,
you know as an example. But I find we punch way above our weight, like way above.
Yeah.
We're like in the lightweight division, and we're fighting the heavyweights.
Some of the stuff that happens here, man, I wish that it got some more attention on it,
Hmm.
because we're a small market. Like, we have a population of roughly that of Quebec City, like, I think, in the
Yeah,
whole province.
the whole province.
So, in the whole province.
Hmm.
And the stuff that's coming out of here is, it'll blow your mind. Like, it's
Yeah,
so good. What I where you have a scene like Halifax, St. John's to a certain extent, they tend to try and push music that kind of fits a certain genre or narrative, if you will.
hmm,
Like, not to, be controversial or anything, but if you look at like what's getting nominated for awards and stuff in Nova Scotia and Newfoundland, like, they're trying to find things that are commercially viable, at
hmm.
least. And New Brunswick sometimes hits on stuff that's commercially viable, but they
Yeah,
really do still, the music New Brunswick, they support music as an art form, right? They're
yeah,
trying to create means for people to be successful making real art.
yeah.
And I really appreciate that
And that comes from the
about
top
New
down.
Brunswick.
With Music New
Yes.
Brunswick comes from the top down because Jean Surette, as a musician, as a guy that's
Hmm.
in the scene, he knows and he helps, direct,
Yep.
what's needed and what's needed to support the artists. He's a fantastic human being. And everything that Music New Brunswick does is just top shelf.
Yeah, like, that's I have a grant for this next record with Jason. Otherwise, I'd be making it in my basement, right? And
Mhm.
that's Music New Brunswick. And they get behind the projects that they believe in. It's fair. Like, they make sure that there's representation, and they're not just going to hand me money. It's like, what are you going to do
No,
with it? Like,
yeah.
culturally, what are you trying to accomplish, right? And one of the things that I was saying is, like, I want to make country music, but I want to make country music that's conscientious, right? Like, if I write a love song, I want it to be something that if somebody sang that to one of my kids, that it wouldn't make me cringe. You know what I mean? Where that's like, this is an authentic representation of an loving adult relationship, as opposed to, girl in that blue, those blue jeans, and let's go down and,
Slide over,
get
let's go to
get
the lake
get
and
right. Like, and
yeah.
do I hope that they have those things in their life? Sure.
Yeah.
But that's just not the kind of
Yeah.
message that I want to put out into the world.
Hmm.
And
It's like the
so,
executive has a checklist on their wall with
mm,
pickup truck, check.
yep,
Case of beer, check.
yep,
Tight jeans, check. Like
yep.
it's unbelievable.
And at the same time, like, I don't drink anymore either, right? So
Yeah.
I don't want every song that comes across my radio to be a, drink a beer, or
Hmm.
um it's beer 30, or, red solo, like,
But yeah,
like, so much of it is about drinking.
yeah.
And
There's
it was like,
that's helping sell a product,
well, because it's
right?
it's helping sell a product, but it all, like, these things, it's like trendy, and
Hmm.
so a lot of those things, like country music, that's LGBTQ friendly, right? That anyone can listen to it and kind of feel a connection to it. That you're not alienated because of, being who you are.
Yeah.
And you can, like, the music, I want it to be, again, these are grandiose statements, as I recognize that I'm a middle-aged white man here.
It,
I do.
guilty. Yep. Same. Yep. 100%.
And but at the same time, like, I think that what makes a good man, we've come to redefine that over the years. But the way that I try and look at it, at least, that kind of guides me, is that, like, am I making the world a better place, even a little bit, by being in it, for other people, versus making it a better place for myself? And I've had to there's been, like, this bit of an ego transformation. Like, when you try and get into this industry when you're pushing 40, I will tell you that the amount of when you get into this music industry, my age, it's not easy. You're going to get rejected a lot. And if you don't park your ego, it's going to get clubbed to death.
Hmm.
And I think that it's just opened up new perspectives for me, getting to travel with music, and meet a bunch of people. Like, I think that it's really helped me grow as a person. And I want that to be kind of reflected in my music and the way that I look at the world.
Yeah,
So, and
absolutely.
I'm always just trying to get better at whatever it is that I'm doing. Like I'm proud of where I'm at, as a person, as a musician, as a songwriter, as a father, as a
Hmm.
partner,
Yeah.
all of
And
those things.
at the
But
end of
I'm
the day, you have to be able to live with yourself and what
Yep,
you're putting out into the world.
yep. But
Yeah.
I'm always trying to learn new ways to improve on doing all of those things. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
exactly.
And but at the end of the day, if all that's left is I have my family, and I raise a couple of loving, empathetic, conscientious kids, good, job done, right? Like I'll leave the place better than I found it by at least a bit. So,
Yeah. Awesome. Perfect. Sweet. Well, I don't want to take up any more of your time. I've
oh
already
man,
taken up
no
so much.
worries, no
Um,
worries.
this is this has been an absolutely fantastic conversation, and I'm going to link all your stuff. And I really do appreciate. I know it's kind of a quick turnaround, just asking if you wanted to do it and
No,
doing the podcast.
timing worked
Uh,
out great. So,
yeah,
thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
perfect, awesome.
Cool.
All right, so as I said at the top, Colin is that top shelf bourbon or liqueur that you want to reach for and just kind of settle in and just enjoy his music. So if ever you do see his name on a marquee or there's a show in your area with his name attached, do yourself a favor and go see that. There's so many great artists in this province and in Atlantic Canada, and he is no exception. So the cream rises to the top, basically. So I could talk his praises all night, but I won't. So just do yourself a favor, check it out. I'll have his links in the description, and I'll also have a video in which he talked about his collaboration with Emily Landry from Baritone Studios. So check that out. And until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and stay safe. All right. Till the next one.